What's up, everybody? This is Fred Richani of TSC. In this retro TSC News podcast, we interview Josh Keaton from back in 2022. He is a legendary voice actor. He played young Hercules in the Disney film Hercules. He's played Spider-Man in the animated series. He was Captain America in the first season of Marvel's What If. The list goes on and on. He discusses his amazing career in animation, video games, on screen, and much more.
Always keep learning. Never really just assume that where you are is where you have to stay, or where you are is where you can stay, because the world is changing. Everything's always changing. There's always going to be new people coming up that are different and new and fresh, and if you're not constantly learning and adapting and evolving, then you're just going to kind of go away.
What's up, everybody? This is Fred Richani. We have right here on the line a very special guest. You may recently know him for playing Captain America, aka Steve Rogers, and a little show on Disney Plus, Marvel's What If, but he's done so much more. He's played Spider-Man, he's played Ant-Man, he's done so many video games under the sun. We're pleased to be joined by voice actor Josh Keaton. Josh, thank you so much for the time. How's everything going?
Hey, Fred, thank you for having me. Everything's been going fantastic, spectacular.
Awesome. Well, I like the spectacular backdrop. I also love the branding. Can you show us the shirt you're rocking here?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, a buddy of mine actually made this for me. A buddy of mine who was in Voltron Legendary Defender with me, named AJ. He made this actually for himself, but it didn't quite fit him like he wanted. So he's like, hey, you want this shirt? And I was like, of course. And here I am.
It's pretty incredible you're a pretty young guy, but for well over 3 decades, since you've been a kid, you've been in this acting game. You of course have voiced some legendary characters in TV and movies and video games, and we'll get to all of that. But we got to talk about What If. You're no stranger to Marvel projects, as I mentioned at the top of the show. The list goes on and on. Not only did you play Spider-Man, you played Electro in the most recent video game other than Miles Morales. You also did Harry Osborn as well. I mean, you've done so many voices.
I've been Norman. Like, that's the weirdest thing on the planet for somebody who's been Spider-Man.
That is wild. And actually, before we get to What If, is it hard to kind of go from different voices when you're kind of used to playing one character specifically in the same series?
Kind of. Well, these were all in different outings, so I wasn't Norman in the version of Spider-Man where I was Spider-Man. So it's all different projects, and so that definitely makes it easier. I would say that it was definitely a little weird to be Norman, but on the other hand, like that's kind of the fun of acting, is that like for a long time I was playing a lot of these just coming of age teenage hero, unsure of his powers type roles, and then I also played a lot of these, just heroic large voiced guys, and so to get to be on the other side of it, where I basically, because obviously every villain is the hero of their own story, and to try to figure out what that story was and why they really believed in what they were doing, and why these objectively good people are bad to them, like that's half the challenge that in this business, and that's one of the things that makes it super interesting. So as weird as it was having been Spidey to play Norman, it was also fun just to kind of figure out what my inner Norman was.
Now I'm wondering, did you pretend you were Willem Dafoe while you were doing that? Did you imagine you were just like, what that?
I mean, I had, there was definitely a little bit of that in my head. Alan Ratchins was actually the Norman in the show that I was in, and I really liked his take on it as well. So basically, it really just came down to douchey businessman, and but with a superiority complex, and just figuring out where that lied in my range.
Marvel's What If on Disney Plus, depending on the day you check, it's like the #1 show on that platform.
Yeah.
Fantastic animated series. For those that aren't really familiar with it, it's kind of an alternate take on the MCU, as in what if
Yeah,
there wasn't a Captain America? What if Peggy Carter became Captain Carter? The list goes on and on. We don't want to give too much away, but
it really expands the multiverse. So basically, within the MCU world, there are many other universes where different things happen, but it's still MCU, which really just opens up the best can of worms ever. Because this is what I'm a comic geek, and this is what I used to do with my friends. We would sit around and at somebody's house, and we would have these discussions. What if this happened? Or what if this happened? Or what if this person had this person's powers? Or what if this person fought this person and this person died? And then now, what happens? So this show is that, and it's an amazing thing to see as a comic fan, Because, like I said, these were the discussions that we had well into the wee hours of the morning.
With What If, you play the legendary Steve Rogers, aka Captain America. You're no stranger to doing all kinds of roles throughout your career, all kinds of big projects. But I would imagine, at least in recent times, this has got to be your biggest project. So has it been any different as far as from your approach as a voice actor compared to some of the other work you've done?
Well, definitely, I would say that doing the voice for, because it was a voice match for Chris Evans, and that initially, well, that right off the bat has its own it's its own thing, and it's a very different thing, because as opposed to me playing a character in an original way, I have to match somebody's iconic performance that everybody has really been hearing for like the past, how many years has it been? Like
It's been like 10 years now.
Yeah, like this is Cap to people, to a whole generation of people. So you have to do that justice, and you can't really stray too far from that box. And at the same time, you're not doing a direct mimic where, you're just kind of parroting lines that were already in something. Like, you kind of have to interpret how you think Chris would have done it, and still keep it true to the character, still keep it true to the voice. There's a lot more that goes into something like that. And to be honest, when I first did the role, I wasn't really, it was just another job. They said they wanted a sound-alike for Chris Evans. I wasn't sure if they specified voice match or sound-alike, or because they have different terms that they use in the business. They'll say voice match, and with that, they want it to be like the voice, like as close as possible. Then they'll have like a sound-alike, which is somebody that sounds like it. And then they'll have like something that's even less specific, which would be like a feel-alike. So it doesn't even really have to sound like them. It just has to kind of have their zhuzh, their vibe. And I think this was somewhere between a sound-alike and a voice match. So basically, I auditioned for it. I did the job. I didn't really think much of it other than, hey, this is pretty cool. And I like the whole concept of it. And then it wasn't until it was just about to premiere that I found out that it was canonically part of the MCU. And at that point, I started to get really nervous. Like, it hadn't even premiered yet. And I was like, the fans are going to like roast me over the coals, because I'm like one of the only non-MCU actors that's going to be in this. Everybody else came back. They got Cumberbatch in there. They got
so many guys. Even
they got everybody. They got
R.I.P. They even had Chadwick Boseman in it.
Yeah, they even Chadwick. I mean, so they didn't have Scarlett, they didn't have Holland, and they didn't have Cap, and I think they didn't have Batista, because I think my buddy Fred Tatasciore voiced him in that. But I mean, when you have everybody coming back and it's just Chris Evans, it's like, what are they going to say? But everybody was super supportive. Everybody, I got so much positive feedback from the fandom that my initial fears were very much put at ease. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely a different process. I would say that what I did was I have every single MCU movie, and so I just kind of went through, and I have like a media server. So basically, I ripped all of my DVDs, everything, all my physical media, and I put it on this computer that I have that I can basically access from anywhere in the world. I can access it from any device I have. So it's like my own personal Netflix. That's just my stuff. And so I basically opened that on my computer. I opened up my Pro Tools program, and just kind of scrubbed through these movies and made a little library of Chris Evans. So anytime he said something in a movie, I would kind of categorize it, and I'd say, okay, this is like Cap, in battle, and this is Cap talking to the soldiers. This is Cap being tender with Peggy. This is Cap talking to Bucky, and so I would have like these little situations, so that if I needed, if I had a similar situation come up within the dialogue in What If, I could just kind of refer back to my little library and say, okay, these are kind of the situation. So this is kind of what he would sound like in that situation. And then I would just have to work from that.
I know with voice acting and everything, it's a different process for each project, especially now with COVID and everything.
Sure.
So was this done during COVID or before COVID? And did you have a chance to interact with the other actors in the studio, or were you just recording your lines?
Unfortunately, it was just me by myself. Basically, the first episode I did in studio. The first episode was pre-COVID, and then the other episodes that were in the season, I did right here. I'm at home right now. This is a paper backdrop, but behind that backdrop is my my vocal booth. In front of me is the studio setup that I have. So basically, I mean, I've had a broadcast quality studio in my house for probably about 12 years, and I built it and work out of it. And Normally, I'd say about 80% of the work that I would do was out of the studio, would be somewhere else in another location. Like for this one, I had to go to Disney Studios. But since COVID, in the after times, I'd say about 90% of my work is here. I just did a session yesterday, and pretty much, I'm trying to think when the last session I actually had to leave the house for was. I think it was maybe 3 weeks ago, and before that it was like a few months. So yeah, everything's kind of been switching around to the point where I've actually seen a lot of my colleagues moving. Because before you would have to be in LA, or if you were doing anime, you would have to be somewhere. I think it was Austin, I think. But you would have to be in one of these talent hubs where they do a lot of the production, to be able to really work in the industry. And now it's kind of switching because they've seen how easy it is to do remote connects, and the technology's jumped in leaps and bounds. Everybody has pretty good internet, and people have had to go just to work to build their own booths and or buy them and get all set up for that. So now everything is, I wouldn't say everything, but so much more has been remote.
So would you say majority of your work now, as far as like auditioning, if you have to audition for anything, is it mostly kind of self-taped, just like in your own studio?
Well, auditioning has been pretty much self-taped for a very long time. Like before technology was cheaper and more accessible, you would go into your agent's office and you would do the read there, and that's how you would audition, because they would have a studio, and then they would just have everybody come in and you'd record there, and then they'd send it out. And to some extent, well, my agent's not really open because of COVID. They all work remote now, but before COVID happened, but while technology was still kind of cheap and available, you still had a lot of, the boomer crowd that wasn't really good with technology, or the honorary boomers that were young and still not so good with technology, that would go into the agent and still do the read there. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of the way it is now. Like you have to audition here from home. I would say even a lot, because I'm an on-camera actor as well, and I haven't done a whole lot of it because I've been so busy with voiceover, but it's something that I've been, getting my way back into. Even a lot of on-camera projects are casting more off of self-tapes now. Before, you would always have to come in, and then self-tapes were like a rarity, that if you were out of town and if you were important enough where they still wanted to audition you if you were out of town, then you could get the privilege of a self-tape. But now they're doing so many more things off of self-tape. It's just the casting process is really becoming decentralized.
Would you say in some ways too, it's a lot more efficient in a way? Like it makes kind of your life easier and Brett's life easier? Obviously, I'm sure it'd be good at times, especially for anything live action, to be there in person. But at the same time too, you can kind of keep it moving rather than have maybe an audition take up your whole day.
I agree. I mean, travel time was the worst. Whenever you would go to an audition, they never had parking. So it was always street parking. So you were always kind of looking around for a parking space. And LA is so big that it's not like, Manhattan, where you can just, walk somewhere. You can't. Like, I live literally 30 miles from where any auditions would be. So there's no subway, there's no train. There's you're not going to Uber to an audition. It's like there's nothing. You got to drive, and you got to park, and you have to figure in all that time, and then you got to drive back. And usually when the auditions are is right in the middle of rush hour. So, to go in there for 5 minutes, you're going to spend about 3.5 hours out of your day. And that's if you're lucky. That's if there's not an accident. That's if, all things being great. So, and also, like, look, as there's a lot of extroverts, but there's a lot of introverted actors that just really aren't comfortable with the audition process and having to go somewhere and having to, deal with people and do all that. And, some people are snobby, but some people just look snobby, but they're really just introverted and not really comfortable. I can kind of fall into that bracket where, just the process gives me a bit of anxiety, and you get better at it over time. You get better at dealing with it, but it's so much more comfortable to be able to do an audition here. And, you can really put your best work forward, because it's not like you don't have to deal with so many unknown variables where, something could come up that is totally out of your control, that totally ruins your audition. And then, that's it, you're done. That was your shot. And I mean, if it's something that's your fault, if it's something you didn't prepare enough or whatever, that's, then that's on you. But there've been plenty of auditions that I've gone into where things have happened that have been out of my control, that have totally just sunk it. And those suck. And you go home just feeling crappy about it. And there was really nothing you could have done. The world happened, But here, you're at home. You can really just, if something happens, then you do another take and you submit the good take. So it for a lot of people, I think that self-taping is great.
Awesome. And you mentioned earlier that the Marvel's What If is now kind of part of the MCU. Well, technically,
yeah, no, it's officially MCU.
It is, yeah. And I was gonna say, for anybody that may be wondering, like, wait, how's it part of MCU? If you literally go on Disney Plus, you could scroll down in the Marvel section. They'll have like everything in the timeline order. And What If, I believe, like immediately follows Avengers Endgame. So yes, you are officially part of the MCU, my friend.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, even the Watcher says that these are all different universes, and these are all multiverses, and different things happen in different ones, but it's still the same universe. So yeah, I didn't get into the MCU as Spidey, but I got in somehow. I weaseled my way in.
You did, and if anybody wants to challenge it, I'm not going to even give any spoilers, but between Doctor Strange and the manipulations of time, it all makes sense. That's all I like about the Marvel stuff. Whether it's the anime, I mean, you've worked in so many Marvel projects. Like, what I love is that the continuity is just always there. It just makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, and the writers do such an amazing job of really referring back and calling back to the canon MCU that we've seen. They do such a good job of doing that it drops right in, and it's totally believable. I can't speak highly enough about the writing in the show.
We talked off the air about your career. I was trying to confirm if you've been around for 2 decades, 3 decades. You said over 3 decades, and it absolutely stunned me because you're 42 years young.
42, yeah.
You certainly don't look a day over 30. So
thank you.
Your skincare routine, but just incredible. So everybody, of course, sees the finished product, right? Oh man, Josh Keaton, he's in What If, he's in Spider-Man, he's in this. But obviously, every journey has a start. So how did acting start for you?
Well, I was a kid, and it was a totally different time. Like now, you could you could start a career online, start a career as a social media star, and go from there. There was no social media when I was growing up. There was no internet. And the internet didn't really come around until like the 90s. And I mean, I grew up in the 80s. So it was a different time. Like somebody had to find you. You had to know somebody in the industry. You had to have an agent. Like there were just things that had to happen. And so I have 3 sisters. I have an older sister who she sang a lot. And so she would go into like beauty pageants, but she would enter the talent competition. Because, beauty pageants are really just like, who paid the most money to enter the most subcategories to get in it, and they're the ones that are going to win. But you can't really fudge talent. If you enter a talent competition and you're obviously like the best in that category and somebody else wins, then something's not going to smell right. So she would enter the talent competitions and she would do very well on them. And through one of these beauty pageants, she got an agent who would send her out on like commercials. And there was this one, and I was a very precocious kid. Like I would dress up as like Superman and like dance around on tables at restaurants like McDonald's or whatever. And so I would basically talk to anybody. And my parents told me that I had like very, very good pronunciation for my age. So like I would always, all of my S's were very, very, all of my, sh and all those sounds that normally would escape young kids. Like I had them down. So I would go and I would talk to people like I was this little adult. And so she had this audition for some commercial. I don't even remember what it was for. And I was just tagging along because my dad worked 3 jobs sometimes. My mom schlepped us around to our auditions, or schlepped my sister around to her auditions. I wasn't auditioning yet. And so I was there and I just started talking to the casting lady. And I think she asked me, where my mom and dad was. And I said, oh, my dad's at work because, he works. And so I'm here with my mom and my sister. And I was very intent on telling her my dad's name because I thought his name was Honey, because that's all I ever heard my mom call him. So like she thought that was hilarious. And so they brought me inside and I ended up auditioning for this thing that I wasn't even there to audition for. I got it and my sister didn't. And so that kind of is what started the whole process. So yeah, I was, I weaseled my way into this too.
That's incredible. And as I guess a child actor at the time, how did you kind of, and even up till now in adulthood, like how did you stay level-headed? Because when you start young, I mean, there are a lot of trappings of fame and everything, and
absolutely,
there's there can be some bad influences, especially back then. Like, how do you kind of stay on that sort of straight and narrow path and eventually get consistent work?
I had very strict parents, sometimes to the point of overbearing. And I think that one of the big things was that we didn't really live close to LA. We lived in a suburb outside of LA, and I had really no way to just be there all the time. So like I would go there for work. My parents would drive me. But when it came to actually like the hanging out stuff and you know, the times where kids would normally get in trouble, like I really had no way to get out there. So, I mean, at the expense of that was like childhood friends. I did not have a lot of childhood friends or much of a social life. But in the end, I guess they kind of helped me because I didn't really get involved in a lot of the same stuff that you know, people who went down the bad road did get involved in. You know, again, very strict parents. I have 3 sisters, so it's like there was always something to do. Like I was always busy doing something. And then school. Like I was a nerd. Even though I was gone a lot for filming and stuff, like I was still very I did very well in school. There was always something to do, and then just the activities that I did choose. I mean, a lot of them were solitary activities. I love video games. I love computer stuff. So I mean, that was all stuff that I could do myself. Cars. I was really into cars. I still am. But I would be really into modding cars, and that community is, you know, there's bad apples in it, whatever. But for the most part, it's a very supportive community, and I made friends with good people. I'd say, you know, just having the small group of friends that I did have were really good people, and that's what kept me grounded. I mean, I really didn't I didn't fall into a lot of those traps because I just didn't have the time.
Kudos to you. Kudos to your fam for helping keeping you on that path. And as far as voice acting goes, because you initially started out as a traditional quote unquote live actor,
Yes.
now you're more known for your voice acting. So what was your first big break in voice acting, and when did you realize, okay, you know, it'd be cool to be live action, but this is where my bread and butter can be?
Those were 2 totally different times. Basically, I had been doing voice acting from the time I was a kid, but there weren't as many opportunities at the time. Like now, they do use a lot of kid voices, because with computer recording, it's much easier to just kind of get them to parrot back how you want it, and they edit it together. So even if they do it over 5-10 different takes, and they have to edit like pieces of the phrase from all those 10 takes, they can still do it and get a nice take. They couldn't do that before. So a lot of the time they would hire adults to play kids. One of the exceptions was Peanuts, with Charlie Brown. They always insisted on having real children play those parts. And I was Linus in the special, and that was something that I just auditioned for, sent out by my on-camera agent, got that job. There were a couple other things. I was in a show called Peter Pan and the Pirates, where Tim Curry was Captain Hook. I was one of the Lost Boys. And then I did the Back to the Future animated series. I was Jules Brown, Doc's brainy kid of the 2 kids. But those were really the exceptions. Like those were the three big things that I did in voiceover when I was young. And aside from that, they really just hired adults. And when I was probably 15, 16, it came out when I was like 17, but I had started working on it when I was probably closer to 15, was Hercules, was the Disney animated movie Hercules. And I got that. That was probably my big break into voiceover. I mean, and what a break, right? Getting to be a Disney prince. And I mean, in his awkward stage, but you know, I was in my awkward stage. It was, if you go and look at the behind the scenes, you'll see a very young, very greasy me. Man, I was greasy, but, yeah, that was kind of my big break, into it. That's what led to me getting a dedicated voiceover agent. Cause up until then I had really just been submitted by my on-camera agent. And at this point, an actual, like just solely focused on voiceover agent, had approached me, and it was then that I really learned about how many facets of voiceover there are, like commercial and promo. And promo is like the people on the TV that say coming up next and blah blah blah. That's like a whole industry, and I had never even known about that. I was the voice of Extra, the TV show Extra, the gossip show, for like 10 years, and that was a promo gig, and I didn't even know about that until I had a dedicated voiceover agent. And so I would say, in terms of really knowing that this is something I really enjoyed and spending time with. Because I mean, I would say for a while, I was still doing a lot of on-camera auditioning. You know, when voiceover stuff would come up, I would do it, but I didn't really take it seriously. I didn't, you know, cast it aside, or it wasn't chopped liver or anything, but I was still really focused on doing on-camera stuff. But in sometime in the 2000s, there was a writer's strike. And so a lot of on-camera production shut down, and the stuff that did stay around, they were trying to really get ratings because so much was shut down. So even guest spots went to celebrities. And if you weren't a celebrity, you weren't working. And that strike did not affect animation. So at that time, I got a couple of really sweet gigs. I got Spider-Man, and I was doing a bunch of other stuff, and that really kind of tided me over. And then the more I started doing more VO, and the more I started playing some of these heroic characters, I started to really realize, you know, I can get cast to play a lot of things that I would never get cast to play on camera, because like I have light skin and blue eyes, but I'm Latino. And so I would always face this weird issue where when I would audition for things, I wasn't Caucasian enough to play the quote all-American parts. That was like the code that they would use when they wanted like a blonde guy for a part. They would say all-American. And so I wasn't Caucasian enough for those roles. But then when I would go audition for like Latino roles, they would look at me and they'd be like, "Are you Latino?" And I'd be like, "Yeah." And they'd be like, "Well, but you have blue eyes." I'm like, "Have you been anywhere outside of where your mind is?" Because they, you know, Latino people they look like anybody. So yeah, like that was always really frustrating to kind of be in this weird middle ground, because my mother's from Peru and my father's from New York. So it was just weird, you know. Like I could maybe play an Italian guy, or even though I'm not Italian, I did play an Italian guy in Will and Grace. But yeah, like I really enjoyed that about voiceover, that if you could do the voice, you could be the character. It wasn't so much there wasn't so much of an emphasis on your physical appearance, and that was beautiful to me. And so I really realized how much I enjoyed that. And I mean, I still really enjoy on camera acting, and you know, getting to be in costume and getting to have movement and props and all of that. So it's still something that I haven't completely written off. But yeah, I mean, I'd say I was probably in my mid-20s when I really realized, hey, I love this. Like this is awesome.
Wow, and I love the description. You could pretty much be anybody as a voice actor, whereas as a physical actor, sometimes unfortunately, out of your control, you can get typecast, or you're not cast at all. So that's great, definitely a great way of putting it. And as far as just the consistency of your work over these years, is it obviously your quality of work, people want to hire you, but I imagine these relationships with Disney and Marvel and all these video game companies really kind of played a part, right? Like they get comfortable with you, they know, okay, Josh is great, and then it just continues that relationship from there.
Yes and no. That does happen to an extent, but I mean, you're still always fighting for that next role. It still remains a very, very competitive business, because there's always somebody new coming up, and or they might be trying to get a celebrity to be in this, or so there's still a lot of ups and downs. I mean, I've been doing this for over 30 years, and some years suck and some years are great, and you're always having to work. So
you got to ride the wave, essentially.
Yes.
Go with the flow.
Yeah, you gotta save during the good times, because there are going to be not good times. So
good to know for every young voice actor.
Yes.
Now, are you ready for our lightning/random question round? We always like to ask a lot of kind of random questions just to get to know our guests better. Are you ready?
I suppose, yeah. Let's do it.
Cool.
Let's do it.
What's your favorite late night snack or cheat meal?
Pizza. Pizza is for any time of day, any time of night. That's like, I love pizza.
My very biased New York, New Jersey side is going to come out. I got to ask you, have you tried our pizza, and what do you think?
I have tried New York pizza. I'm a fan of all pizza. It's funny, like I really enjoy a thicker crust than New York offers. However, that doesn't mean I don't enjoy New York pizza. There's actually a place right by my house called World's Best Pizza. I'll give them a plug. And when I first heard their name, I was like, that's really pretentious. I'm like, you're going to call yourself World's Best Pizza? But you know what? They have amazing pizza. It's incredible. So, and they're more of a New York style.
Cool. All right. We'll have to check it out when we see in LA.
Yeah.
What's your favorite Peruvian dish?
My favorite Peruvian dish is bistec apanado with tallarín verde. And that's basically a very, very thinly breaded steak, or a thinly cut breaded steak. Delicious. And then the tallarín verde is it's basically made with like a pesto, like this green, like a spinach pesto, I want to say. I'm not exactly sure what all goes in it, but it's green spaghetti, but it's delicious. It's like my favorite thing.
Sounds amazing. I think I'm gonna get some after this interview for sure.
Yes.
Who is your all-time favorite actor and voice actor?
My all-time favorite voice actor, I would probably have to say, I'd probably have to just go all in for Frank Welker. The man is a legend. I was fortunate enough to work with him on Transformers Prime, where he reprised his role as Megatron, and just a class act, just such a sweet guy, and he's a legend. He's a living legend. My favorite actor, that's a tough one. I'd probably have to say, I think that Daniel Day-Lewis is incredible. The scope of his work and the fact that he can just disappear into any role. Yeah, I mean, that's and then on the other end, I'm a big Jim Carrey fan. He can be ridiculous, but he can make you cry. Like Truman Show, I think is still one of his best outings in terms of a serious role. But to have that kind of versatility where you can be completely wacky and off the wall and over the top and still bring it back for something that grounded is, I think he's very underrated.
Yeah, his range is incredible. He's also a painter too. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I have. I've seen some of his paintings. He's quite good.
Yeah, he's the man. You mentioned you're a gamer, and I love that because of course we cover a lot of gaming. What is your all-time favorite console? Your all-time favorite video game? And your all-time favorite video game that you were a part of?
My all-time favorite console. Ooh, that's a tough one because I mean I have the PS. I was lucky enough to finally be able to get a PS5 and a PS4. I mean I'd say the console that I play the most of would probably be the PlayStation. But my all-time favorite console, I'd probably say was the Sega Dreamcast. I loved that console. I bought it specifically just to play Resident Evil Code Veronica because I was a huge fan of the Resident Evil series, and that was exclusive to the Dreamcast for a while. And there were just so many great games on that. Like there was Crazy Taxi, and there was the Typing of the Dead, which was like House of the Dead, but you played it with keyboard controllers, and it was like a typing game. So instead of like shooting at the screen, you were typing these weird sentences. Like it was great. SF Rush 2049, Hydro Thunder, like there were just so many good games.
Shenmue, man.
Yeah, that was great too. Like I have such good memories from that console. But you know what? I don't even know if that would be my favorite. Wait, what were the other parts of the question?
It was all-time favorite console.
Okay.
All-time favorite video game and favorite video game that you worked on.
If all-time favorite video game, I would have to say, I mean, I'm a huge World of Warcraft fan, and I've been playing that game for over a decade. So, I mean, I would probably have to throw that in because just in terms of the sheer amount that I've played the game. But right up there also has to be the Mario series, because I mean, those were some of my earliest memories as a gamer. Super Mario 3 was amazing. Super Mario World is still a great game. Like these are games that are timeless, and I showed them to my kids, and they were able to just pick them up and start playing them. So I'd say that the Mario games, along with World of Warcraft, and then I'd also have to throw in a driving game. I'd have to throw in the Forza series because I'm a huge car fan, as you know, and playing those with a wheel was one of my favorite things to do on a big screen. You just felt like you were there. So yeah, and the other part was favorite video game that I have been a part of. Probably World of Warcraft. I play King, the King of World of Warcraft. Well, not of World of Warcraft, but of the Alliance, King Anduin Wrynn. And that's been a fun character because like he started out as just like this little kid, this little NPC, and he's literally grown up in the game and over the course of the game's existence. So in kind of real time, which is crazy. So yeah, I mean that's probably my favorite character for a game that I've been in. Our favorite game that I've been in. Yes.
I got what you're saying. What's your most awkward moment as an actor?
My most awkward moment as an actor. Probably when I was in Baywatch and I had to wear a Speedo and I had not started working out yet. So I was kind of skinny fat, and it played on every single teenage insecurity that I had to be in front of Donna D'Errico in a Speedo as a teenage boy and have to like be okay with that. Man, that was horrendous. And she was super sweet, and everybody was really nice in the cast. But that sucked.
Man. Dude, you were also in Boy Meets World back in the day, which for the young folks that don't know.
TGIF.
Yeah, such a legendary show. I know you had a small role on there, but can you just describe what it was like?
If you were a nerd and you didn't go out with your friends, that was your Friday night. You would watch Boy Meets World and Family Matters and Step by Step, and there was another show, I don't remember what it was, but Boy Meets World. Yeah, no, Boy Meets World, Family Matters, Step by Step. No, there was still another one. There was another one. I can't remember what it was. Yeah, it was great. You know, I was friends with Ben Savage at the time. You know, he was part of this group that would all kind of hang out, and it was cool. It was just cool to go to the where did we film that on the Disney lot? To go to the Disney lot and just get to drive on. That was always a cool thing when you would guest star on a show and you'd actually get to drive on the lot. Because you would go in there for auditions and they would always have you like park in the parking lot. But if you were on the show and you weren't just auditioning, you actually got to drive to the stage and park by the stage, and you'd have your trailer and all that. It was just a cool experience.
What's a day in the life like for you? Like, how do you juggle everything? You mentioned you have kids. Of course, you have a burgeoning career. You're based in the LA area. Like, how do you juggle everything and kind of stay focused and stay balanced?
It's hard, especially because there's so many distractions at home when you don't actually have to go anywhere. Like, actually having to leave the house to go to jobs and do all that really kind of gave me structure that I've had to replicate without having the structure. So really, I'd say that like having things to do is paramount. So the fact that I actually have to wake up so that I could help my wife get the kids ready to go to school, and we both take the kids together. And pick them up together when I can, but we usually try to make it a point to take them together, which also just, it helps. It forces me to get up. It forces me to get dressed. It forces me to make myself presentable because, you know, if you work at home and nobody sees you except on a Zoom screen this big, you know, all you have to do is just kind of make sure your hair's okay and put on a shirt. And I mean, you could be wearing nothing, and have not taken a shower in days. But like, if you have to actually leave the house, then you tend to take better care of yourself. So that really helps. It helps taking the kids to school, then come back, have a little bit of coffee, set up. I usually have auditions in the morning, so I'll come in here. I'll take care of all those. Sometimes, you know, I'll have to, if I have a job that day, then I'll make sure to schedule for that. Other than that, you know, just answering emails, finding a time to work out, whether it's in the middle of the day. And that's another thing. Like, I gained a little bit of weight during COVID. I'm sure a lot of people did. And, you know, the older you get, the harder it is to get rid of that. So it's like, I've now had to really get myself into a point where I'm like, I don't care what time of day it is. I'm going to work out. If the kids haven't gotten to bed till 10 o'clock and I still want to spend some time watching something with my wife and she goes to bed at like midnight and I still haven't worked out, I'm going into the garage and I'm going to go work out because I have to. Like, the older I get, the harder it's going to be to stay healthy. So, I mean, you really just have to create that structure. You just have to give yourself a schedule and keep at it.
How important is it to have a supportive partner who kind of understands this life, right? Like, you're on an account, and nothing against accountants, but I mean, this is the entertainment business is very unique. It's very time consuming and everything. There's the highs and lows. Like, how important is it to have a wife who understands that?
My wife is a superhero. She really is. She holds everything down. Like I basically, I try not to leave everything to her. You know, I try to be as involved as possible with the kids and help them with homework and read to them and have them read with me, and clean up around the house and do all that because I don't want to leave everything for her. But, you know, when I have to step out, she handles it like a rock star. Like, sometimes I have to go do conventions. And so I'll be gone for, you know, a weekend or whatever. And so she's just taking care of the kids and it's, everything has not, completely fallen apart when I come back. And it's, she's also very creative, herself. She's a photographer and a graphic designer. And so like a lot of the ideas that I've made into content, like, I did these YouTube videos where I was reading Spider-Man memes as Spider-Man, which have gotten millions of views. That was her idea. I did, for Voltron Legendary Defender, the show that I was Shiro in, I did a parody of You're Welcome from Moana, singing it as him, and I had other people in the cast, and I edited a video together. That's gotten over 2 million views. That was her idea. I mean, she basically comes up with a lot of the really creative ideas that I'll end up just kind of doing, And so yeah, I mean, she's amazing, and it's to have somebody that is not only somebody that's going to kind of keep your ship afloat while you're trying to be creative, but somebody who can actively contribute to the process and really kind of set you straight when you're starting to stray. Like she's incredible, and it's very important to have somebody supportive for sure.
So shout out to your wife, Mrs. Keaton, the real MVP.
Elizabeth, I love you.
Awesome. And we'll get you out of here on a high note. What's the best piece of advice you give anybody for success?
To always be learning. Always keep learning. Never really just assume that where you are is where you have to stay, or where you are is where you can stay, because the world is changing. Everything's always changing. There's always going to be new people coming up that are different and new and fresh. And if you're not constantly learning and adapting and evolving, then you're just going to kind of go away.
Josh, we really do appreciate the time. Before we let you go, where can fans find you online, and where can they find you next on screen?
My social medias, you can find me on Twitter. I am Josh Keaton, at Josh Keaton on Twitter. I am at Space Padre on Instagram. I am at the Josh Keaton on TikTok. I just started posting on TikTok because, you know, that's where all the kids is. And I stream video games on Twitch TV, and I am Space Padre on there as well. I'm on a service called Cameo, where you can like kind of log in there and request that I do a video for you, you know, whatever. And that's cameo.com/Josh Keaton. So yeah, and there's some other projects that I'm in right now. I'm currently in Arcane, the League of Legends show that just premiered on Netflix, and I play Deckard and a character named Salo. And let's see, what else? I am Black Spider in Young Justice Phantoms that just dropped. And there's a couple other things coming out that I am not at liberty to divulge yet because they haven't been announced. But all that stuff will be on my socials when I am able to talk about it. And What If?
What If, as Captain America, a.k.a. Steve Rogers. And, oh, yeah, Young Justice Phantoms. I knew you were on Young Justice. I didn't realize you were on Young Justice Phantoms as well, which just recently got added to HBO Max. So congrats to you, man.
Thank you.
Marvel Universe is huge, but DC Universe is just as huge, just as passionate of a fan base. Just a quick bonus question. What's it like kind of being a part of the lore of both Marvel and DC? And do you ever get any kind of flack for that with the fans?
Hey, man, the way I see it is the more comic stories that you can have, the better. Like, I can always get caught up in, like, with cars. It was Ford versus Chevy, and it's like, oh, you know, Mustang sucks, Camaro's great, and I had a Mustang growing up. But, like, I was able to respect that both cars were great, and both car makers were great. Like when people, I have a Tesla now, and so people are like, oh, Tesla sucks, and it's all about the Porsche Taycan and all that. I'm like, look, the more EVs that we have, the better all EVs will become. So, you know, instead of having a pissing contest about this one's better than that one, let's all appreciate the fact that they're all competing against each other to be better, and that's just going to improve everything. So, I mean, I've never really bought into the whole, oh yeah, you got to be a Marvel or a DC fan. I'm not a big tribalism person. It's probably why I'm not really into sports. Like I like everybody to play a good game. So yeah, I mean, I love being part of both of it because it's just, I get to be part of more stories and be more characters. And that's what I love doing.
Fantastic. Well said, Josh. We appreciate the time. Again, you can check them out on all those shows you mentioned, but of course, Marvel's What If on Disney Plus, Young Justice Phantoms on HBO Max, Netflix. Josh, thank you so much for your time, man. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Fred. It was a pleasure talking with you.